Hey guys, it's Amelia, but not the pilot, just Amelia, and it is the end of the year, so we are going to get into my reading wrap-up for 2024. I have a tier ranking plan for you. Also, we'll look at some stats, because you know I love some statistics for free. I love when the companies steal all my data and make a little pie chart. Before we get into it though, I just want to talk about the elephant in the room. I feel like there's been a lot of discussion this year on BookTube, Book Talk, about people reading too much or fake reading or just reading for quantity, not quality. And I think we as a community really need to get back into the concept that booktubers and like readers are sort of different things. Because I'm reading for myself, but also reading for you guys, if that makes any sense. So it's not really realistic to read 100 books in a year. Did I do that? Yes. Do I have any social life besides this? No. But also, like, reading is, I would say, a big priority in my life, so I sort of make that effort to read instead of watching TV. I don't really watch TV or watch movies at all. That's sort of how I read so much in a year. But I think we need to stop shaming people for reading what they want to read. If people read children's books, young adult books, but they're adults, who cares? Who cares? At least they're reading. Because when it comes down to it, the statistics are really sad. Like, in average, most people read maybe one book a year. Not even that. And that is crazy. So this is just my little PSA moment to say, don't be upset if you're not reading 100 books a year. If you want to, there's steps you could take to do that. But also, like, if you read more than one book this year, like, congrats. Because that's not the average, sadly. On top of that, I would also like to say, shout out to the libraries. You know who you are. Use your local libraries, because they're literally free. I would like to start with the statistic that I think is crazy. I did a little computing myself. I don't really know why I did this. I was bored. And looked up the price of all of the books and audiobooks that I read and used this year from the library. And I basically saved $1,700 because I didn't buy all of those books. So use your library. I know some people are like, oh, but I love owning them, or I take so long to read books. I would say, in general, most libraries don't have, like, due dates anymore. Their due dates are suggestions. Like, these days, libraries are so desperate for you to use them, they literally like, please take this book and don't give it back. Anyway, use your local library, especially for audiobooks, because I realized this year that Audible doesn't really have that good of a deal. I think it's $21 at the moment for 2 books per month. That's the same price as, like, buying an audiobook, so I don't know why you would rent it through Audible if you could just buy it. But anyway, that's a different problem. If you don't have a library near you or are not able to get a library card for some odd reason, there's also other libraries that exist out there, such as the QLL, I don't remember what it stands for, Queer Liberation Library, maybe? I'm sorry, I don't remember what it's called. But it's an amazing resource. It is an online library, basically. You could sign up completely for free online, just with an email, and they give you your library card, and then you have access to a whole bunch of books on Libby, which is a library app. So I please use your library, and best of luck with your reading for next year. But let's get into what I read this year. So this year I read 116 books. A little crazy. So let's just, like, look at some stats. I read 43,000 pages, which is quite a lot. Oh, okay. So last year I only read 90 books. I thought I read 100 last year too, but I guess not. I'm just delusional. But last year I read 90 books, and I only read 26,000 pages. So I basically doubled what I read last year, page-wise, which is crazy. I didn't know that I did that. That's really interesting. So last year I was in school still. I was writing a dissertation for my master's degree, and then I was unemployed for like 3 or 4 months. So that's probably why I didn't read as much. This year I was generally unemployed, but I did have like a summer job for the entire summer. So I think that's where this difference is coming into play. My shortest book was a Kiera Cass ebook. I can't get into this. I read the entire selection series. I reread them because I had read the first 3 when I was prime Kiera Cass age in middle school, and I loved them. I still love them. I love the idea of them, but they're not good. I reread them and I was like, they're straight up bad. Was like, I had never read, I think, the 4th and 5th one. This was at the beginning of the year, so I don't remember it super clearly. But I had never read the 4th and 5th one, and so I sort of wanted to read them all in one go so I get the whole picture. And then I've been doing this over the years recently so that I could like get rid of some of my old books that like I loved in middle school but no longer have any meaning to me, but I want to like reread them to make sure that they don't have meaning. And the answer is the selection series is like crazy. The first one is really fun. It's such a good concept. But then for some reason, it spreads out across 3 books, and then we get like a spin-off duology that was bad. But we also have all these like little like 0.5s, 0.2, 0.3, and that's what this is. This is 11 pages. That's what that was. And it wasn't good. And it was like an epilogue. I don't know why they didn't just attach it in the book. My longest book, obviously, is an Outlander book. I am trying to read them. I basically read like 1 Outlander book a year. I don't like them anymore. However, I'm a completionist and I need to finish the series. So here we are. I will probably read the next 3. Maybe this year. Maybe 1 every year. Maybe I'll be reading them forever. Who knows? One day, I would like to read a Brandon Sanderson book instead of Outlander. But we'll see. My average book length was 372 pages. My most shelved is always Harry Potter. This sort of bothers me. I wish I could like click certain books to like not include in the data because it's a massive outlier and I do an annual reread every year, so. My least shelved is Locks and Legends. This is a book that is written by one of my tour guiding friends in Scotland. He just wrote like a guide to Scotland, but it's sort of like stories, like little tales from his life and myths and things about different areas of Scotland with suggestions on what to do. It's quite cute. I recommend it. My average rating was 3.5. That's pretty average. My highest rated book is Prisoner of Azkaban, but that's not, yeah, Harry Potter. Excuse all my data. First review of the year was Dark is Rising. I think that was the first book I finished this year, which I had been reading over Christmas, but just didn't finish it in time for the new year. So I think I finished it like on New Year's Day, but. And then these are all the books that I read this year. We'll be looking at these later, so I'm not going to slow down. And my last review of the year was Breaking Time. That's not true. I finished 3 other books, but that's fine. All right, let's check out Storygraph. So if you don't know, Storygraph is a newer book platform that's not owned by Amazon. Goodreads is owned by Amazon. I have a love-hate relationship with Goodreads because I feel like I've been on it for so long. I like the way it's designed, but they just really don't have any new innovative features ever. And Storygraph is sort of the response to that. It's owned by the people for the people. But I do believe that like the design of Storygraph is pretty boring. It's all black and white. But they have statistics all year for you to look at. So every month you could look at your stats. They're just always up. And I do sort of like that. And I like that Storygraph offers more pie charts and bar graphs and little statistic things to look at rather than just telling you this is what you read. So I think it's interesting. You can compare months or you can compare the whole year from last year, things like that. So I really enjoy it. Let's get into it. It's basically the same data, but just shown a little differently and more data. I only read 23,000 pages this year, and then I listened to 596 hours this year, which is interesting because Goodreads doesn't break that down for you, and Goodreads was saying that I basically doubled the amount of pages I've read, but this is saying that I did not, that I read less than I did last year, but I listened to more audiobooks. I don't know if that's true. Average time to finish 13 days, that like sounds right. I feel like in general I finish a book in a week, but then I'll get into like slumps and the books will take me like a month to read, but I read a bunch of books at the same time because I'm a little crazy like that. I know some people can't like keep plots apart, but for me, I feel like each book is so different that I don't usually have any problem telling them apart. I also am a very visual reader though, like I can see what I'm reading, and I know not all people could do that, so that maybe that's why I can keep them apart very well. So in general, my books were mostly emotional, adventurous, mysterious, lighthearted, dark, and funny. Okay, that sounds right. And my least read was challenging and relaxing and informative. Yeah, that tracks, honestly. I mostly read medium-paced books. Mostly 349 pages. That sounds right. I don't really read short books, and I don't really read books. Audiobook length, interesting. Mostly fiction. That tracks. I'm actually sort of surprised I even had any nonfiction in there this year, because I didn't really feel like I read any nonfiction, but okay, genres. So I'm looking at this on my phone, but also my computer at the same time, because if I click on it on my phone, it like goes to it. But anyway. Alright, so I could also compare to last year's stuff, which I also have up on my computer. So this year I read 63 fantasy books, 43 young adult, 38 romance. I'm sure those like overlap, like that's not just 38 separate romance books. These are just genres in general. So my top are fantasy, young adult, romance, classics, and LGBT. And last year it was fantasy, middle grade, young adult, LGBT, romance, and history. It's interesting. So it didn't really change all that much, but... And then I've been really into tagging. So on Storygraph, you could tag things. I would say this is similar to Goodreads' shelf function, how you could like create shelves and put them on shelves, if you will. But it's basically like a folder. So you're tagging that book as, oh, it belongs in this folder. On Storygraph, I like that you can like tag them rather than put them in like a folder shelf. I don't know. I tag a lot of things though in Storygraph, and I hope one day I will be able to figure out how to make graphs on Storygraph from this stuff, or like separate it a little more. But I tag authors' statistics, sort of like where they're from, like American author, UK author, things like that, because I'm sort of interested if I'm mostly reading American, which it turns out I am. If they are female, male, non-binary, I tag where the book is set, like if it's in the UK, it's in California, it's in Zimbabwe, Australia, whatever. Just because I'm interested to see if I'm diversifying. Turns out I'm probably not. I think the most I'm reading is like UK area. I also tag tropes just because I'm curious like how often these tropes are popping up, or like if a friend really likes the one bed type of trope. I could go, oh, well, I have a folder that has all of the books that have one bed in them. So I've been doing that, but I also am tagging other things like sort of like themes in books. So if the book is witches, if the book is about magic, if the book is about war, or it's a historical fiction. So I've been tagging those type of things. So this year my top tags are female author, which is a majority of my books are written by a woman, an American author, which a majority of books are American authors, which is interesting to me. I'm gonna try to change that next year. And then genre-wise, romance, fantasy, adventure, headstrong characters seem to be very common. I read a lot of books with magic. I like books with magic. A lot of queer books, royalty, gods, strong female. Interesting. These are my top ones. Soft boy. I also started tagging like character archetypes, I guess you could call them, because I feel like there's a common thread in like romance books and fantasy books of like the main love interest is like a soldier boy or like a backyard neighbor boy, soft boy. So I've been tagging those as well. So I read a lot with soft boy, if you will. I read 21 this year. I saw the injury trope, as in like they got hurt and then the other person took care of them, which is my favorite trope, so I'm glad I got a lot of that this year. Forest, I just love a book that has like foresty vibes and includes a lot of forest settings, so I've been tagging that as well. And I read 19 books that were my favorite this year, so that's pretty good. Format, I read almost half in print, and then the rest in audio with a small, only 9 digital ebooks is what that means. That's pretty interesting, but that tracks. I don't really like reading ebooks. I think I read faster when I read an ebook, but I don't like enjoy it as much, and I'm too busy like thinking about, well, how long is this chapter when I'm reading a digital book? Because when you're physically holding it, you know how many pages are left in the next section, if you will. I don't know. It's like a subconscious distraction for me when I'm like reading an ebook. My most read author this year was Kiera Cass. Iconic, because I read her entire series. And then Stephanie Garber. Stephanie Garber is a new author for me. I read all of her books this year, basically, and I loved them. So that was really fun. I can't wait to read whatever she comes out next. Rachel Mead. I also read the Vampire Academy series this year. That was part of my rereading my middle school books. I didn't like them. And then 5 Diana Gabaldon. Yep. For J.K. Rowling. I think this is the first year that Joanne has not been the top one for me. Just because I reread Harry Potter quite often. She usually pops up as one of the highest ones. I really like this graph. I think this is the most interesting graph to me. I look at this one like sort of throughout the year. So it shows you in blue that is how many books I've read, but the page number is red. So I read 20 books in January, but like I only read 1,100 pages in comparison to some other months when I read more pages but less book quantity, if that makes sense. And then the green line is audiobook hours, or minutes rather. So I think that's really interesting because it, like, January felt really productive, I guess because I was reading a lot of books, but it was a lot of, like, the short books, part of the Kiera Cass series, I guess. But in reality, I didn't read that many pages, where my most, like, productive month was September. And then June was a big audiobook month for me, I guess. I don't know what was going on in June. I was working, really. I guess I traveled a bunch in June. I listen to audiobooks a lot when I'm traveling. Maybe that's what that was. And then last but not least, we have a little rating system. So this is just overall how many books I rated in each spot. I will say, I feel like this year didn't feel like I read a lot of books that I loved. And I feel like some other booktubers have also been expressing that thought. But now looking at this, it's like, no, I did. I liked a bunch of books. Most of the books, it looks like I rated 5 stars. So I had 33 5 stars, which is pretty big, because I don't just hand out 5 stars to anybody. Lots of 3 stars, that makes sense, and some 4 stars. But there is a lot of 1 stars. I think last year, let me look. Last year I only had 4 1 stars. And this year I had 13. So I will say, I think I read a lot of books this year that I didn't like in comparison to previous years, which is why it felt like that. So I know this has already been a little bit long, just looking at all my statistics and stuff, but I really wanted to do a tier ranking of all the books I've read this year. So I'm going to do it really fast, but I'm going to talk about a few select ones as I do it, and then we'll just discuss the top, like, tier 5 books that I really, really loved. So let's get into it. All right, boys, so let's get into it. Here we have my tier ranker. I put all of the photos, the covers of all the books that I read this year. I think this is all of them. I'm not quite sure. And then I did group all the Vampire Academy books in one slot because they're just going in one thing all together. But these are all the books I read this year, and here are the tiers that I have figured out for us. So we have Screaming Into the Void in a good way, which to me is like above a 5 star. Like, I sort of wish it was like a 6-star scale or something. Something like, because there's 5-star books that I'm like, oh, I love this book, it was great. And I know the average person will like it. But then I have some books where I'm like, I'm going to think about this book for the rest of my life, and I need everyone to be talking about it, and there's not a ranking for that. It's like a 5+ star, you know? So that's what that one is, the red one at the top. Then we have Amazing, no notes. That's 5 stars, right? Then we have Woo, which to me is just like, it was a good book, perhaps even great, but it wasn't perfect, but I liked it. I liked it a lot. Then we have Fine, yeah. That to me is like your average book. The 3 stars, a 3-star I feel like is probably what I hand out the most, because I feel like there's a lot of books out there that are just, they're mid. They weren't bad, they weren't good. I'm sure someone else would love them, but I thought they were just fine. These are usually ones that I think have like plot problems or editing problems that I wish were fixed. Then we have how did this get published? Which for me is, I think gonna be a big one this year, because as we just said, I had 13 books that I gave 1 star. And then we have Don't Talk to Me. Don't Talk to Me are books that I don't know how to rate, so I don't think I'm going to. We're just gonna start off real fast with an example of, where'd it go? Save the Cat. So I read the Save the Cat novel, which is a book that explains to you how to write novels. I don't really feel like it needs to be rated because I'm not reading it for like literary value, if you will. I was reading it for instructional purposes, and I thought it was great because it really helped me, but like, I'm not gonna rate this book because if you don't want to write a book, don't read this. So that's what that category is for. Let's get into it. So I'm just gonna be doing these really fast, I think. And in general, yeah, you'll see how it goes. Some of these I did reread. Ooh, I don't know where to put Race Years. That was good. I'll put that there. I am not like a super big romance reader, but I read a lot of romance books this year. Yeah. So The Dark is Rising, I sort of talked about a little bit before, that I was reading it. It's a kid's book, but it's supposedly a really popular UK kids book that you can read in December, literally like the week around Christmas. So you're supposed to read like almost 1 chapter a day because it lines up in reality with like dates on a calendar. So it's like, this is December 1st, this one's December 3rd, like he does this on December 16th, whatever. And you're supposed to sort of read it along with Christmas coming up with your kids or whatever. I read it last year because I heard everyone talking about it, and I thought it was good, but I also had lots of problems with it, but I think that's because I am not a child. However, I like it and I've been thinking about it, but like, I don't understand the hype, per se. I can't see. Oh, is that The Hobbit? That's a little controversial. I'm gonna put it down there. I don't want to rank my friend's book, so I'm not going to. But it's down there. I think it was good, and I think it's very, like, informative. So I would give it a read. But it's like, if you're going to Scotland, read it. Interview with a Vampire was crazy. I don't know where to put that, because it was bad, but... Oh man, Great Expectations. I can't read which that's Two Towers. Okay. Two Towers, hot take, I don't love that much. My favorite one is Fellowship of the Ring. I'm gonna put it up there. This was fine. Little Women, I love, but... Okay, here's where my hot take comes for Outlander. So this year, I ended up rereading all the Outlanders I had read already in prep for continuing to read the series, but I did them as audiobooks so that I wasn't, like, physically sitting here reading 1,000-page books. I think the first 3 Outlander books are pretty fun. They're pretty cool. Fun little story, really long for no reason, but they're fun. I also believe every single Outlander book is actually like 2 books together because 2 full plots happen in each book. Don't know why she did this. But basically after the 3rd book, the books get really bad and are almost unreadable. I have rants about them in other videos that you could go watch if you want to. I don't like Everything I Know About Love. I don't know why people are obsessed with it, to be quite honest. Frankenstein is pretty good. Rebel Rising was fine. I read a lot of memoirs this year. I think they were all fine. Yeah, wait, I'm gonna move Britney Spears down here, because she was fine. Down the Drain, though, that was fun. That was crazy. Back Friend was really good. Tempest of Tea was awful. Tempest of Tea was one of my least favorite books of the year. I will be thinking about it forever with how bad it was. I'm so upset about it. I feel like it was so hyped. It was like made out to be this new Six of Crows, and it was not. Oh, and the writing was bad. I am putting Squire down there and the other graphic novels that I read, because I just don't rate graphic novels. Like, in my head, it's like they take you maybe 30 minutes to read, and I don't know how to rate them because I don't read that many graphic novels. It was fun, it was cute, but like, I think in my head I'm looking at graphic novels more from an artistic perspective than a story perspective. All that to say, I will be putting Nomona up here because I really liked Nomona. Because not only was it pretty, it also had a fun story. But I digress. Once Upon a Rock Heart! It needs to go up here. I love Stephanie Garber, man. It was so good. Prisoner of Azkaban's my favorite. That's why it goes up top. My Rest and Relaxation, whatever that book is called. I hated that book. I don't understand the hype around that. I don't get it. It was bad. Five Broken Blades was good, but it wasn't wonderful. Same with... Okay, The Familiar I really enjoyed, but I did feel like... I don't know. I didn't love it. Outsiders We Love. Oh man, I got thoughts. I'm sort of biting my tongue, even though I've made the rant videos already, so you don't need me to rant again, is what it is. Sandman was fine. I'm not gonna rate it at all, actually. Percy Jackson was bad. I don't know why that ultimate guide exists. It's not even written by Rick Riordan. I can't get into it. I will be reviewing it in the January video, which is my November-December reviews. Hasn't come out yet. Please stay tuned. This one's fine. Okay, How Do You Live is a book that was made into a Studio Ghibli film, and I thought it was fine. Not that good. Same with... I read a couple, like, self-help books that were popular called Slow Productivity and 4,000 Weeks, which is how many weeks you have on life or something like that. And I both thought they were fine, but not super helpful. I wouldn't recommend them, but I don't know. Emily Wilde was... I'm conflicted about Emily Wilde. I made those vlogs, so you could go watch them. But I thought they were fine. The Pairing was definitely one of my favorite books of the year. Why won't it let me go up? Here we go. It's running out of room. What Moves the Dark was so good. Or The Dead was so good. This was fine. This was fine. This is a graphic novel. Divine Rivals was also one of my favorite books of the year. I'm gonna put that at the top. Percy Jackson is always a favorite. I'm adding When Shadows Grow Tall, and where's the other one? Oh, it's not on there. I read 2 different books that I was given for free from NetGalley this year, and I'm putting them at the bottom because I already said my I said my bit. You don't need to hear it again. Oh, I have this in here twice. My bad. As I said, I loved the first selection. The other 3 are weird. I feel like they should all be put together. Yeah, wait. Okay, that's correct. And then these 2 go down here. That's what it is. Spectacular is pretty good. Yeah, that was fine. This one is fine. Oh, that's the same book, but with a different cover. Okay, I don't know why these 4 are in here, because I did not... This is a duplicate, and then that is also a duplicate, and then I didn't read those 2. So I am missing some books. I don't know what they are. I guess maybe some of the ones I recently read? Oh, the Caraval ones. I'm missing the other Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart. Anyway, let's discuss. So, I reread Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I love anything V. Schwab writes, so she'll always be at the top for me. I also have Our Dark Duet on there, which is her sequel book to one of her kids' books that she wrote a really long time ago. And I really like it, but I do think it has problems for a children's book. I think it was way too confusing. I barely understood what was going on. I cannot imagine a child trying to read this book. Other ones I have at the top, One Day was so good. It is a romance story. It's set in the UK, Scotland, London. It also goes to Italy at one point. It's just a really interesting concept as well, though, because every single chapter is these two characters and they only meet on St. Swithin's Day, which I think is June 15th? So every single chapter is June 15th in a different year, which is just such an interesting concept, and it was so well written, and it's so sad, it was so good. So I read that one this year. I also really loved The Pairing. That's another romance book. I know I just said I don't like romances, but here we are. The Pairing is a queer romance story by Casey McQuiston, who also wrote Red, White, and Royal Blue. This follows childhood best friends to lovers to exes. Second try romance in this book. It is 4 years later after they've broken up, and they both end up on the same food and wine tour across Europe by accident. They don't know that they're going to be on the... So they see each other and they're like, can we be adults? Can they? It was delicious. Very spicy. Then we have The Outsiders, a classic. I love The Outsiders, one of my favorite classics. I think this was like the first book that I read in school that I actually genuinely enjoyed. And it's sort of crazy because she was 16 when she wrote it. And then we have Divine Rivals. I know I'm not going in order. This is fine. I love Divine Rivals and the sequel, Ruthless Vows. I did put Ruthless Vows just a little bit below because I loved it when I first read it, but I read them back to back in like basically one sitting, and so I think that's why I devoured it. But now, in retrospect, I've been seeing discussions about it, how people didn't like the second one as much, and I see where they're coming from, and I agree. So I think I hastily gave it a really high rating, but I still really loved it. So I think it still deserves 5 stars, but I didn't like it as much as the first one. All that to say, it is World War I trench warfare vibes, but it's these two journalists who are rivals to lovers, and they are like wartime journalists, but they are connected by a magical typewriter that they both have, but they don't know that's who they're connected to. It's delicious, is all I had to say. It literally had me like kicking blankets, punching and screaming. It was so cute and like, oh, delicious. So that was fun. Then we have the Atlas 6 series, which I read the beginning of this year and was so good. A lot of people don't love Atlas 6. I do think it is very pretentious, and you just have to get into that. I think Olivia Blake's writing style is just sort of pretentious in a good way. Love you. But I love these. They're very Marauders vibes to me, very Harry Potter. It's basically like adults getting chosen for a magic school, and they get there and they find out there's only 6 of them because it's elite. They get there and they find out that by the end of the year, one of them has to die, and they will decide who has to die. On top of that, they're learning like very elite, very fancy magic, and it's got a lot of like morally gray concepts and things. It makes you think about like, well, who deserves knowledge? Everyone? I think so, but whatever. It's that type of like, well, should everyone know if something bad is about to happen? Or like, does everyone get knowledge? Who is allowed to have knowledge? Things like that. I just found it delicious. It was delicious. So I read all 3 of those in one sitting, basically, as well, and I loved all of them. But I know a lot of people didn't like them, so maybe with a grain of salt, read it. Then we have Lord of the Rings. I reread Lord of the Rings this year. Hot take, but I only really like the first one. The other 2 I get bored because it's a lot of war, and I get really bored with like war and battle books, so it's just not for me. But I do love the overall story of Lord of the Rings. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the movies, I guess you could say. But I guess I'm a fake fan of the books. But I have now read all of them because I had never read the 3rd one, fun facts, until this year. So here we are. And then we got Harry Potter, of course. We're not going to talk about it. Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart. I read Once Upon a Broken Heart first. You're not supposed to do that. It's the spin-off series. but it was fine. It didn't really have that many spoilers for me. But Caraval is the main series. Both of them are super fun. They're basically the same vibes of sort of like curses and wishes and what I like to call like Disney magic. Like it's all about that like fanciful whimsy. Everything's like gorgeous. They're in gorgeous castles. They're wearing ball gowns, knights in shining armor, but it's not like women who can't take care of themselves, you know? So I really enjoyed these books. Caraval follows two sisters, Donatella and Scarlett, who have always wanted to go to the Caraval festival. I don't remember what it's called. And they're finally, it's invitation only and they're finally invited, but now they're adults and Scarlett is like, we can't, we have responsibilities, but Donatella is crazy wild. And anyway, they end up there and the whole Caraval festival is a very like mysterious sort of puzzle game that you are inside of. And you don't know what's real, you don't know what's fake, which I love in a book. And there's hot boys and also fun puzzles and prizes and drama, and it was delicious. And I don't want to say too much else about it because I don't want to spoil anything. But that's what Caraval is. Once Upon a Broken Heart is a spin-off and follows this like god deity system that is part of the world building of this world. It's all in the same universe. And it's touched on in Caraval, but they don't really go into it until Once Upon a Broken Heart. Once Upon a Broken Heart follows a girl who has wished upon the altar of the god of broken hearts. They're sort of like minor deities, if you will, minor gods, I guess. There's 12 of them, and I think they're based off of like tarot card vibes, sort of. It's just fascinating. I think Stephanie Garber's world building is so good. It's delicious. I love the way she describes balls. I love how it just like makes sense in the world, but also it's like the craziest like Disney fantasy you've ever thought of. Like it's just beautiful skyscraper palaces and like the craziest balls and festivals. So Once Broken Heart follows, I don't remember her name, but she wishes upon the god of broken hearts altar and then is put into a deal with him, but it's not perhaps what she wished for. So it's all in the details. But she's a very like good character, if you will. She's always morally good and she's a hero, if you will, and he is not. And he's a trickster and a liar and he does what he wants, and I loved it. It was delicious. 10 out of 10, they were both great. And I just read her recent one as well, Spectacular, which is like a Christmas special, basically. But those are the books that I read this year. Some honorary mentions from the Amazing No Notes section would also be Changing All-Stars, which is sort of dystopian look at American prison system. It was crazy. It's sort of like Hunger Games and American prison system reform. You need to read it. It was so good. I also listened to Colin Jost's memoir this year, which was very, very good. I just think any writer from SNL will have a great memoir, to be quite honest. Tina Fey's one is also amazing. Then we got Painted Devils and Little Thieves. This is a trilogy. The third one's coming out in 2025, and I really, really liked them. It's sort of, I want to say it was Polish? I can't quite remember, because I read this in January, but I think it was a Polish mythology base. And it follows this girl who is an orphan, who is raised by the goddess of thieves, question mark. She's a very, like, trickster, thieving girl who gets entangled in something bigger. And I really, really liked both of them. I thought the first one was going to be, like, a standalone, and I really didn't understand how the second one would even work, the way they wrapped up the first one, but I really enjoyed both of them. Last but not least, new Percy Jackson just came out this year. It was great. No notes. Okay, these last two are both like ooky spooky, foresty reads. Don't Let the Forest In is a kid's book, so it is a younger reading level, but I really enjoyed it. About these two boys, well, it's a group of 3 friends, a brother and a sister who are twins, and then this other guy, and they're all sort of outcasts, but they're all friends together. It did give me Harry Potter trio vibes. It also gave me sort of Marauder vibes. And they go to a private school, but there's something going on, and our main character is having weird problems. There's stuff in the forest. They can't understand what's going on in the forest. Everyone's in danger, but only he knows, basically. And there's also lots of, like, foresty growth. Are there vines growing inside of him? You'll have to read to find out. Now I'm moving things around because now I'm getting conflicted. Your Blood, My Bones was also really good. Also foresty, spooky vibes. It's about a girl, also gave me Marauder vibes with the friendship situation. It's about this girl who had these two friends who were guys, and they came to her house every summer because her dad was in sort of like cult practices, and they live in a house in the middle of a forest in Maine, I think it was. But she hasn't seen them in 5 years now, and they haven't reached out to her, so she's like, we're not even friends. But her dad passes away and leaves her the house and the cult business, and she wants nothing to do with it, so she goes back to the house to burn it. And she goes and she's about to burn it, but she hears something in the basement. And like a classic horror story, instead of running, she goes into the basement, and you know who it is? Her best friend, and he's tied to the wall. What's going on? It was crazy. It was so good. So I really liked that one. And last but not least, I just read What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This was a recommendation from Carrie Cakes. She's another YouTuber. I love this book. It's a short story, so you definitely have time for it before the new year. I literally read it in like 2 hours. It's so interesting. It's also a gothic horror house foresty mushroomy book. But it has this interesting layer to it about like gendered pronouns and culture and being non-binary, which I thought was fascinating. It follows a soldier who is from a fantasy culture. So it's set in England, and there's all World War II things happening that they're discussing. And our main character is a soldier who I guess was in World War II. But from their culture, the pronouns are going to be confusing. From their culture, they don't use they them pronouns but I'm going to use they them pronouns for the sake of this video because you need to read the book. In their culture, in their language, they have lots of pronouns. So it's not just he, she, what? She, her, he, him, they, them, and we, obviously in English there are other ones, but not as commonly used. In this person's language, they have tons of commonly used pronouns. So there's pronouns for inanimate objects, there's pronouns for children, there's pronouns for men, there's pronouns for women, there's pronouns for whatever. But there's a specific pronoun just used for soldiers that makes them genderless, basically. So it's like they, them, for the sake of this explanation. And so they are a soldier, and they use they, them pronouns because they're a soldier, and in their culture, that's how it works. And so it was interesting, because that's not even, like, really part of the plot, but that's just, like, a character trait, and it's an interesting take on that, like, a statement on pronouns and gender inclusivity, and how this character has to navigate the world, that put it in a really interesting perspective. So I definitely recommend that. So those are my books of the year. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any recommendations for next year. Let me know if you've read any of these and you liked them as well. Or if you have books that you think are similar to some of the ones that I read that you think I would like, let me know. I'm building a list already for what I'm going to read next year. So I'm looking for recommendations, and I will also post a video soon talking about my plans for next year. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you guys for watching. Bye!